I'm not here to poke holes in suspended disbelief.
Anyway, they see some weird shit. They decide to make a baby.
Thou merkin merchant.
Who gives a fuck?
I kind of just want to start calling you Damian yells at school boards.
Well, we really like it here. It's kind of nice, and it's not as cold as back home, and the soil is a lot better. So, yeah, sure, I think we're gonna settle.
If I'm a peasant boy who grabs a sword out of a stone,
Yeah.
I'm able to open people up
Well, yeah.
anytime I hit them with it, right?
Yeah.
So my cleave landing will make me a cavalier.
Good day, sir. If Siskel thought it was empty-headed plebeian trash, he was probably really gonna groove on it.
Because cannibalism and murder. Pull back just a little bit and build walls to keep out the redheads. Authorial intent doesn't exist. Some people stand up to wipe their butts. Some people stay seated to wipe their butts. Like, it just... This is a Geek History of Time,
where we connect nerdery to the real world. My name is Ed Blaylock. I'm a world history teacher and rabid Dungeons & Dragons nerd here in Northern California, where I am currently teaching world history and one section of remedial reading over the internet. And in some personal news, I just managed to achieve a childhood goal for myself. The other night, I ordered
Velcro shoes.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice. No. I am a child of the 80s, but no. I managed to order for the first time for myself rather than waiting for it as a present from somebody else.
Ah.
I ordered a lightsaber.
I'm sorry, time out. That distinction is hilarious unto itself.
Yes.
Your childhood goal was that you spent with your own money to buy a lightsaber because you'd previously lived in a world where other people would buy it for you as a gift.
Yeah, well,
so it was not specifically the ownership of said lightsaber that was the childhood goal anymore.
I already have a couple, but yeah, no,
right.
I'm getting one. This one is entirely my own. In that way, I'm a Gryffindor. This is a big frickin' deal.
Sure, yeah.
So, it's Rebel Sabers who have not yet paid me any money, but after I receive it, I may be willing to, throw some more airtime their way for sponsorship. But it's a Rebel Sabers Justicar. It's way too pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Way too pretty. It is not going to be here in time for my birthday.
Okay.
But it is my birthday gift to myself.
Nice.
And I am very excited. Additionally, I had a fatherhood moment earlier this evening, where I was moving stuff around on a bookshelf because there's a whole lot of clutter on the bookshelves in our living room, and I was busy moving stuff around. And in the process of doing that, I wound up sitting on the floor, moving stuff into boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And my little boy came over, and he was looking at the very large cardboard box that I was taking stuff out of and breaking stuff down from.
Mm-hmm.
And he picked up a piece of paper out of it, and he said, "Daddy, who is that?" And I told him who that was. And he said, "Okay, and who's this guy?" And I told him who that guy was. And we had kind of a conversation back and forth. And a moment later, my wife spoke from the kitchen on the other side of our open plan kind of apartment.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
She said, "You do realize you're sitting on the floor with your son in your lap talking about Warhammer 40,000, right?"
Nice.
And I said, "Yeah, I did totally know what I was doing, and I am having my own internal glow moment. Thank you." Because I got to explain to him who a space marine was and how he was fighting against a Necron who was an evil undead robot. And I'm not going to lie, that gave me quite the warm fuzzy there, getting to explain that to my little boy. A little earlier, kind of in the same chain of events, he had noticed one of the books that I had taken off the shelf, and he said, "Daddy, who's this guy?" I said, "He's a space wolf."
Nice.
I said, "Space wolves?" "Yes." "I'd never seen space wolves." well, you have, because Daddy's been painting his army on the table, but you've never seen one that looks like that. No. So yeah, I'm introducing my son to the culture of the route and to Warhammer 40K.
Nice.
And on top of that, I'm waiting for my lightsaber to get shipped. So like as a geek,
it's a good week. It's a good geek week.
It really doesn't get very much better than that. How are you doing?
Well, I'm Damian Harmony. I'm a Latin teacher up here in Northern California. I'm doing just fine. My son asked me last week, very, very worried, very concerned William was. He says, I
need everybody in the audience to understand, I can so clearly picture the look that I know was on his face.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen this.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
Go ahead.
So he says, I'm feeling stressed out. I was like, okay, learning new phrases. This is good. I said, what's up? And he says, I'm stressed out about voting. Okay, what's stressing you out? Well, how many elections are there? I was like, do you mean how much time is between elections? Yeah. Well, it depends on the election, son. I mean, there are local elections, there are district elections, there are statewide elections, etc. He's like, do I have to vote in all of them? I said, well, democracy is kind of a sacred duty that we have, and it is only as strong as people participating. So, yes, you do. You need to participate in all the democracy and use it all as strong as you can. And he's like, okay, but I'm really stressed out about voting. I'm like, that's fair. So what you want to do is make sure you're an informed voter. Research the issues, cast your vote, and then you have to let it go. Can you do that? Yeah, okay. All right, cool. I get an email from his teacher yesterday. William wants to run for class president. He's giving his speech today. Oh, and he had not told me any of this. And so then it all kind of clicked into place. So that was yesterday. So yesterday at lunch, I called him because he was at his mom's that day. And I called him and I said, dude, you're running for class president? Yeah. Wow, that's incredibly brave. Why? I have never done that. He says, I know, I'm really hoping that I get it. And me being the very quick thinker that I am, all the possibilities explode into my head as to what could happen, and only one of them ends with him winning. Most of them end with him being very disappointed, and he wears his heart on his sleeve. So I told him, I said, have you ever heard of Abraham Lincoln? He's like, yeah. I said, do you remember what he did? He's like, no, I kind of forgot. Okay, fair enough. I said, he was president. He was a very important president. I said, do you know what he did in the beginning of his career? No. He lost. Oh. I said, yeah, he lost badly. I said, you know what happened the next time? What? He lost again. I said, actually, he only ever won twice in his whole career. All the other times, he kept losing. But he never let that stop him from pushing forward and trying to do good. So I want you to remember that if tomorrow the election doesn't go your way, that you get to be disappointed, you get to be upset, but it's absolutely your job to support whoever wins, and it's absolutely your job to run again if you think that you were the better candidate. But you have to accept the results of the election. And he's, okay, I will. Okay, cool. And so I called him last night. How did it go? He's like, would you like to hear my speech? Absolutely. He read me his speech. I am 90% sure that my daughter, Julia, helped him write that speech. But it was a wonderful speech. And I told him, I said, you have to bring that home because we have to frame that. So then I found out tonight that he did not win, that in fact he was very disappointed and somewhat tearful. And I was like, I didn't get to talk to him. This was just reported to me. And so I was like, okay, well, I will handle that tomorrow. I will absolutely bolster that and very much validate the feelings of disappointment, but also push forward as like we knew that this was a likely possibility. There were 4 of you running. Mathematically your odds are low, but also the fact is that you exercise democracy by participating at a very, very important level. So I'm super proud of my son. He's also
That's
making
awesome.
dinner tomorrow. Because I do this thing now where my kids have to cook out of a cookbook every Saturday. My daughter cooks out of the Dungeons & Dragons Heroes Feast cookbook. My son cooks out of the Wookiee Cookie Cookbook, so he's making hamburgers and Wookiee cookies because we're having the Falcon's Feast, I guess.
Okay.
But he also asked, he's like, is there a Marvel cookbook? So the Marvel cookbook arrived yesterday as well. So I think that that's going to help him soothe the fact that he lost this time. And we can work toward the Nova Nuggets or something.
All right.
So
I like it.
Yeah. So that was a long way around, but it's democracy, baby, and it's working. So
very cool.
Yeah. So I'm also having a pretty cool week as far as that kind of stuff goes.
I'd say that's a pretty major parenting win.
I'll take it. I will absolutely take it.
Like, I'm happy that my kid is just sleeping all the way through the night and,
awesome.
and not coming into our room until 5:30 when the color of his nightlight changes.
I had a friend who had a stoplight, basically a stoplight nightlight. So at yellow you can get off your bed and play in your room, and at green you could come get mom and dad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ours is just blue and green. Blue, you need to stay in bed. Green, you can come into mommy and daddy.
Right.
Because we're not quite to that level of
BDSM training. Yeah.
Cool.
Teach them young, man. Those are rules of consent, dude. That's not a bad thing. It just you don't want to think in those contexts yet.
Yeah.
I get you.
So but So no, we're having a pretty good week.
Cool. Well,
overall.
why don't we get into fourth ed?
Yes.
And spoil it all.
Yes. So
destroy our faith in humanity. I'm ready.
It's not gonna be that bad.
Okay.
It's genuinely not gonna be that bad.
Okay.
A couple points, but it's not gonna be that bad.
Oh, okay.
So when I left off, we were kind of talking about what the onus was, or what the reason was behind kind of the emotional reaction that folks had between third and fourth. And at the very beginning of the episode, you had kind of already kind of struck the chord with it. There was a very big part of it that was the time in which it was happening. And I don't want to make too much out of, like, well, it was Obama running for president, but rather it was that there was a generational shift underway in the hobby.
Yeah. A demographic shift, if you will.
A significant demographic shift in the hobby. The folks who were moving into the prime wage earner category were a younger generation than the ones who had grown up with first edition through third. And so there was, I'm convinced there was a significant generational difference in response.
I believe it.
There was a really, really big mechanical difference between the games, which I want to go into some more detail on, because I think it's important to talk about as we go then into looking at fourth edition into fifth edition. But there was a big mechanical shift between everything that came before in fourth edition, and it was rooted in a philosophical change in the way the game was being presented. One of the things that came up in one of the two source books, Races, Classes, and Monsters, and I gotta look it up again.
Magic?
Worlds and Monsters.
Okay.
One of the things that came up in Worlds and Monsters was this idea that, okay, in fourth edition, the world is going to be a different place. Everybody who had played first edition, second edition, and into third was very, very familiar with settings like Greyhawk and the Forgotten Realms.
Right.
which by this time had developed a whole lot of their own lore, and there had been a lot of storyline development. There was a whole plot line in second edition AD&D. There was a whole plot line about a devastating, like essentially world war in Greyhawk, referred to as the Greyhawk Wars, in which the evil demigod Ayus worked with, manipulated a bunch of powers into fighting against each other, and conquered a whole huge swath of the territory.
Okay.
And I mean, at the time, it was done as a way to kind of shake things up in the Greyhawk setting. But it wound up, as time went on, it then became part of the canon. It became part of the lore for the whole setting.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, when first edition changed to second edition, in the Forgotten Realms, there was a whole huge lore development called the Time of Troubles that explained how the whole cosmos, the whole multiverse, had changed between first edition and second edition, with and the nature of the way gods interacted with their followers changed between first and second edition. So there were these huge changes in the Forgotten Realms between the two game editions.
So real quick though, this game has graduated quite a bit from being, here's how you pretend to be the wizard on the miniatures board, to here is the fiction that underlies this world. And instead of just treating it as, oh, well, if I want to, I can add this lore to it. And it now has become, quite frankly, iconic. And I mean that in the Eastern Orthodox kind of way.
You just made my Catholic heart so happy.
But like
coming from a heathen non-believer like you, that means so much to hear. And I say that with, of course, all the respect and affection in the world.
Of course.
I can't stop myself from calling you an asshole. So
yeah. No,
because I love you. But yeah.
Why not both?
Yeah,
but okay. So, but in all honesty, like it's like people had to go out of their way to get upset about shit, because I could play that game and homebrew my own world and never touch any of the back of that book. I could play in someone else's game and never touch the planar realms and what actually happened cosmologically, because I'm playing an urchin in a city that's nowhere near Greyhawk, and on and on and on. Yeah. Like, it's such a big world that you could absolutely ignore all that stuff, and people are now getting really upset that they've upset the cosmology there.
Well, okay, here's where I was kind of going with that, and you're not entirely wrong. You're totally on point. With
this is lived experience. I've talked to people who were very passionate, which to me it's kind of similar to people who are like really impassionate about those damn Baptists. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Your made up gods are, at least there's stats on these.
Like, at least I know how many hit points this guy has.
Right. I'm like, this is a dogma I can understand. Yeah.
But so.
Your spell goes off at Vespers. It's like that kind of.
Yeah, it's the first Sunday after the first new moon after spring. Yeah.
Oh, it's not per encounter. Okay.
As opposed to those guys, who it's
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
To go into one of the most famous examples in Christianity, like, when's Easter? Oh, don't get us started on that.
Right.
Speaking specifically as a Roman Catholic, I beg you, please don't get my fellow Christians going on that.
Yeah. Well, the answer is really easy.
With all of the reverence I can summon for it, which is a great deal, please. I also have a sense of humor, so I'm going to say, please don't get them started.
The answer is easy. You just say Easter Sunday.
Well, there you go.
Call it good.
Yes, it should be. Yes.
So,
a perfect world.
Yeah.
Yes.
There you go. Anyway, so people are really upset about these made-up gods.
But the thing is, the whole reason I bring that up is because those were incidents, and like the issue with the Forgotten Realms, I do remember
Mm-hmm.
in junior high school. Um, I was never really attached to the Forgotten Realms as a setting. It was not one that really lit me up very much,
Mm-hmm.
but it was one that a lot of people got very passionate about. And the change from first edition to second edition, um, a lot of people felt like fans of any franchise
Mm-hmm.
can tend to feel when there's a huge change in the franchise. People can get butthurt.
Yeah, and that's you know what, that's fair and valid because it speaks to their connection to those characters, that world, that thing. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
get that. I do.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the Forgotten Realms had this huge shift between first and second edition, and there were a bunch of people between first and second who were like, this whole time of troubles, this whole introducing smoke powder and
Mm-hmm.
guns into the setting because it's second edition and we gotta introduce something new, and just I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
kind of ruffled feathers noises. And there were a lot of people who were miffed. But then in Worlds and Monsters, as
Mm-hmm.
a preview to fourth edition, the designers for Wizards who were working on fourth edition said,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to be portraying a world. The baseline assumption for playing Dungeons and Dragons is that you're living in a world where civilization is made up of bright spots in the middle of a darkened wilderness.
Now, when is this?
This was 2007 into 2008.
Well, Jesus, yeah. I mean, think of all the gritty TV.
Oh yeah.
Like it.
Well,
Yeah.
and this was and the way they were portraying this didn't make it sound like a 90s comic book series, like all the grit, post-apocalypse. They never, I mean, like for example, they never used the phrase post-apocalypse.
Right.
You could kind of look at it and see how, well, you're living in a world where the world is, because they, hold on, I got a cat in the way. Sorry. They talked about how you're gonna be an adventurer in a world that is very, very ancient,
Mm-hmm.
but simultaneously very young. And I remember that kind of phrasing. And it was and civilization is made up of these bright points, surrounded by this kind of wilderness. And I mean, essentially, when you put the pieces together, that's kind of post-apocalyptic. It's not like Mad Max post-apocalyptic, but it you can kind of see where that vibe comes in.
In 2006, Superman came out. Superman Returns, specifically. A darker, grittier Superman, where he is a flawed Boy Scout. He's both, older and younger, and he's a single dad, or I mean, he's found that he's got a son. There's a lot of
Brandon Routh did dirty.
Well, yeah, but
I just want to say, because he did an amazing job.
Yeah. I guess my point, my larger point though, is that culturally, this is where we were, like a grittier world. It was there.
Yeah.
It was there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And so they said this about this kind of overarching philosophy of world design.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the game came out, and they before they released the 4th edition version of the Forgotten Realms, they released the Cyclopedia of the Realms, which was kind of a combination lore book and art book,
Mm-hmm.
that included a bunch of like retcon new material that basically created a way for them to turn the Forgotten Realms into this kind of setting that they talked about. And as a player, I'll say that personally, my own opinion was I felt that there were problems with the realms as a setting because it was already so settled. It was already, there already was a dynasty that had lasted for, 12, 13 generations in Cormyr, which was kind of the and now we have our Arthurian fantasy kingdom right here, and that was and that was Cormyr, and then next to them was do you want to play an Italian city state? Then here you are in Sembia, and that was all like built out and developed and defined, and every detail was already kind of figured out because these settings had been around since the 80s.
Yeah.
And just with adventures being published and novels being put out, there had already been so much stuff written that it was like, to me as a player, I was like, so okay, I'm either going to get to be a usurper someplace, or my DM is going to have to introduce some demonicus ex machina
right
to fuck things up for me to wind up coming in and being the hero. Like, yeah,
right.
And so that was my attitude, but I clearly was kind of in the minority because Wizards released this Cyclopedia of the Realms, and there were a whole lot of really angry fans because they had taken a setting that a whole lot of people had a lot of time and energy and emotional investment in.
Right.
And they wound up doing some very fundamental things to the cosmology, and more, I think even bigger than that, they wound up retconning some things from the very earliest beginnings of the proto-history of the universe, in order to come up with a way to get a result that they wanted to get, to have the setting be what they needed it to be, to be the official setting for 4th edition.
Well, you do also see that in Marvel Comics with you getting toward the Sentry, Bob Reynolds, I think the character's name was, where he's basically Superman on steroids. And he's agoraphobic, he's a flawed person and all this, and everybody's treating him like he's been around forever, and I'm sitting there going like, I don't remember this dude at all. And then they absolutely retconned him as someone cast a spell on the whole world, so they mostly forgot him, and that's why we all forgot him, to the point where they even published like 4-color comics versions of the Sentry, which was kind of cool. It was a cool approach, and it looked like the 4-color comics. That's
an interesting conceit.
Yeah, but
I can also see how it made some people really, really, really angry.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
Because there's a level of Scrappy Doo kind of going on there. In that particular case, there's a level of Scrappy Doo going on.
Yeah.
And so then they wound up releasing the setting for 4th edition for the Forgotten Realms. And there was a whole new set of continents that they introduced on the other side of the planet from the Flaneas. No, I'm sorry, Flaneas is Greyhawk, from the rest of the heartlands of the Forgotten Realms. There was a whole other continent that didn't work the same way, that operated like, I want to go so far as to say under a different kind of fantasy aesthetic. And the thing is, as its own setting, I think it could have been awesome. I think there were some really interesting ideas. There was some fun stuff going on. And it was and the differences in everything were tied to the changes that they had made in the cosmology of the universe. And I mean, as a piece of writing, I think it was really good, but I think the problem was there were a whole bunch of players who were already all set to dislike anything that they did with this new edition, because of the way the new edition was working, because of the radical way they were changing everything. And then they did this to this beloved setting, and this was just like pouring gasoline on these people's hate fire.
Yeah.
Like, you know, on top of everything else, look at what they've done to the Forgotten Realms.
Right.
And it really fell flat. Like, there are a small number of people within the D&D community
Mm-hmm.
who are fans of 4th edition. I'm going to go so far as to say I'm one of them. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I genuinely like a lot of things. 4th edition, I'm going to say this. 4th edition is the one edition of D&D that I actually looked forward to being the DM.
Okay.
Because there were a lot of things in the way they designed 4th edition that made running a game a lot easier. There was a very simple way to design an encounter to be at the right level.
Nice.
Multiple in the 3.5 campaigns that I've played in,
Mm-hmm.
there has been more than one occasion on which an experienced DM has thrown together an encounter that turned out to be either way too easy,
Mm-hmm.
which as a player I didn't really ever have too much of a problem with. Although it was, you know, on one occasion it was a little bit of a letdown. Like, really? I've been like waiting for this to be a thing for weeks, and this is what it turns out to be. But then on the other side, one of them very notably turned into a situation that was like a narrowly averted TPK.
Mm-hmm.
Because the DM figured out he was about to have a TPK on his hands, like mid-encounter, and went, okay, I got to change some stuff. And he was savvy enough and creative enough and cared enough about all of us having fun to make those changes on the fly, so that that didn't wind up happening. And that only wound up with half the party in negative hit points.
Wow. Okay.
You know, and we're talking about, and we had a very large party playing. We had something like 8 characters in our party. So in a smaller group, it would have been a TPK.
Sure.
In round 2.
Right.
You know, and so, you know, so having that ability to design encounters more easily mathematically, and the amount of effort that went into, you know, figuring out how we're going to make it so this is easy to do, made it a game where being the DM was something I kind of looked forward to doing. I had a game that I ran that sadly, because of scheduling issues, only lasted a few sessions, but like some of my fondest memories of ever being a DM are from that very short-lived campaign.
Sure.
One of the mechanics that they introduced in 4th edition that I think is amazing is the idea of mooks. They have monsters who are minions,
Mm-hmm.
and the idea is a minion monster does a fixed amount of damage with each attack. So like a minion hobgoblin is going to do 5 points of damage every time it attacks. So to a first level character, a minion hobgoblin is a meaningful threat.
Right.
But if you hit that minion hobgoblin once and do 1 hit point of damage,
It
he
dies.
falls down.
Right. Yeah, I loved that about 4th Ed. I thought that was great.
Oh yeah, because it, number one, it can make combats go. You have to worry about, okay, no, I've got to take these guys out, but I don't have to spend an hour out of a combat encounter. If I've only got 4 hours to play, I don't have to spend an hour dealing with a bunch of low-level mooks when the drama is supposed to be about our paladin going up against their leader. You know, we don't have to spend forever just hacking our way through the hit points of all of the followers.
Mm-hmm. And you don't have to worry about rolling low and this cool spell like not working on anybody.
Yeah, turning out to be a complete disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was great. And then as a DM and as a player, I really liked the idea that they codified a way to earn experience points for skill use. Like one of my fondest memories of being a DM is I came up with a skill challenge kind of on the fly. I only had 3 characters in the party. We had a cleric, we had a dwarf. No, I did have 4 characters. I had a warlock, we had a cleric, we had a dwarf fighter, and we had a thief. And the characters were having their downtime in a tavern, and I had all of them. I rolled for them behind the screen. They all made perception checks, and several of them noticed that there was this weird oily sheen on the surface of their drinks. And one of them like totally did not notice it. And I got to run an entire encounter that was built around the 3 of them who figured it out, trying to figure out who had poisoned them without giving away the fact that they were trying to figure out who had poisoned them. And like they got to earn experience points for doing that.
That's cool.
Because in the Dungeon Master's Guide it said, here's how you do this thing.
Right.
They have to rack up so many successes before they rack up so many failures.
Mm-hmm.
And using this skill and succeeding here can then open them up to use this other skill to do this thing. And like, oh my God, like there's actually a meaningful reason to have spent skill points on stuff. Like, holy crap, that's amazing.
And this is the beginning of the skill challenge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, precisely.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and so there were these things about the mechanic of Fourth that were amazing. But for a lot of people, that wasn't D&D.
Right.
And, the emotional response to that for a lot of those folks was one of, I feel invalidated, I feel attacked, I feel threatened. I feel like you're telling me my choice of game is not as good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, okay, I mean, I can argue about the virtues of this system versus that system, but I'm not saying like you're a bad person for like wanting to just go murder hobo. Like,
right.
If that's what you have fun doing, then go do that. But I'm gonna go over here where I can actually like tell a narrative. Like,
mm-hmm.
This is kind of what I want to do.
Yeah. Well, I think we're seeing a difference again between people who wanted to win. I mean, I remember what happens after you get to level 20. Like, and that to me was not that different than the episode that we did on what happens when you get past level 9 as a fighter. Like they want genuine rewards in this imaginary world. And then you have a new generation of players who want to play in a very different way. And so there are rules to adjudicate any number of things, including combat, of course, but also all these other things that involve cleverness and stuff like that. So again, I get that like people are, it reminds me of whenever people get upset at there being a new Star Trek movie. Like, in fairness, most of the Star Trek movies are garbage. Like, rewatch them, they're hard to bear. And I have thoughts and ideas as to why that is, but ultimately, like, if you look at the fan response to Star Trek movies when they come out, it's always frustrated, it's always aggrieved. And one of the reasons why is because you took the thing that they've invested all their time and love and energy into, and you've changed it, and thereby told them on some level that their love for it was not valid enough to keep it the same. Yeah. So there's a lot of overlap there.
I think there's a lot to that. So, and so this turned into a genuine schism. Like, between second and third edition, there were a great many players who said, "You know what? This. I don't like this. I don't." As you mentioned, the proprietor of the FLGS
Mm-hmm.
saying, you know, this isn't D&D anymore, or you're actually, I'm sorry, it was your DM at second to third
Mm-hmm.
saying, you know, it's not D&D anymore. It's a great system, but it's not D&D anymore. And between 3.5 and fourth, there was this real schism. I mean, you know, you talk about iconic things in the Eastern Orthodox sense.
Oh yeah.
That's really kind of the way it was, and I think part of what added fuel to the fire was the fact that by the time this happened, the landscape of tabletop RPG publishing was a very different place.
Mm-hmm.
And a company like Paizo could say, well, you know what? We've been publishing all these adventures for 3.5. We know the 3.5 rules really well under the Open Gaming License. And so, you know what? We're going to take the D20 system and we're going to change a couple of things. And under the OGL and under the D20 system, we're going to do Pathfinder. And if you don't like the way 4th edition is going, you are going to still have this other source that's going to continue. We're going to continue putting out adventure paths. We're going to continue putting out new splat books, and you're going to get new feats, and you're going to get all this stuff essentially utilizing the 3.5 system. And I know that there are going to be Pathfinder players who are like, Pathfinder is not 3.5. Okay, no, you're right. There are some differences, but I mean, seriously, mechanically, it's almost one for one. They
3.75.
It's like 3.5.2. Like, you know. Now, interestingly, in the last year and a half, maybe 2 years at this point, they have actually come out with a second edition of Pathfinder, which is a much bigger change, because they legitimately looked at it, because 3.5 had basically the same Pathfinder had basically the same problems as 3.5.
Mm-hmm.
It still relied on the Christmas tree issues. It still had, you know, difficulty classes when you got up to high levels meant, you know, skills were still just proficiencies with makeup on them, and combat was still way too complicated. And so they made some very significant changes to a number of parts of the rules, and they released Pathfinder 2.0. And interestingly, my own understanding, being very much at an arm's length removed from it, is that most everybody who's a Pathfinder player looks at Pathfinder 2.0 and goes, yeah, it needed to be simplified, and they fixed a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Which I look at and I'm like, okay, but like changing things to 4th edition was like a bridge too far?
Right.
You know.
Well, yeah, because at that point there's a branding.
Yeah, well, yes, number one.
Yeah.
And then I think also there is the issue that 4th edition was like there are so many mechanical differences.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, you still have 6 stats, you still use a D20, you still add modifiers to a D20 roll, but like saving throws were changed very dramatically. You know, there were a lot of things that were very different, and it was an evolution rather than a simplification.
Right.
Okay.
This still reminds me of, there was an article I read in the Onion after the first Chris Pine Star Trek came out, and I didn't like it because it was the mid 2000s. I could probably look up when. It was like 2007 to 2009 thereabouts. And it came out, and I didn't like it because there was this screeching metal sound, like, and that seemed to permeate a lot of sci-fi movies at that point. They're all doing screeching metal. I'm like, this sucks. And it takes me out of things. But I remember an article being written in The Onion, and it said Star Trek fans angry that new Star Trek movie is a watchable, enjoyable movie. And this totally echoes that.
Okay, so building off of that, there's a webcomic entitled Hijinks Ensue, and I don't know if it's still running, but I know it was when the first of the new Trek movies came out. And the author of the webcomic is a massive Trekkie, like huge Trek nerd, and has been forever. And so the new Chris Pine movie came out, and and he published a comic, and the first two panels were a couple of guys sitting in the audience of the new movie going, "Oh, this is unholy. This is terrible. This is what would Roddenberry say? Oh my God, this is terrible. Such a desecration of the franchise." And you know, you're reading this and you're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, no, he's a typical Trekkie. He hated it. And the last frame of the comic is the main character of the comic, who is this dude in comic form, standing at the front of the movie theater, like clutching the screen and like humping the screen.
Oh boy.
And yeah, it was just, and his commentary about the movie was just like, this was absolutely so amazing. Like, I cannot begin to tell you how awesome this movie was.
Right.
And yeah, so, you know, and I gotta say, I'm the way, you know, anybody asks me, you know, what kind of nerd are you? I say, well, you know, I'm Trek adjacent.
Right.
Like I have a lot of friends who are very passionate Trekkies. You're one of them. You know, you're a DS9 guy mostly.
Yes.
But you know, I have other friends who are very emotionally attached to the original series, who, you know, will argue passionately about, you know, TNG being some of the best science fiction television ever done.
Yep.
Like, you know, and I mean, people who absolutely are madly in love with the franchise. And like, I'm a nerd, so I'm around these people, so I know Star Trek.
Right.
You know, but I never invested emotionally in it the same way that I did other things, Tolkien, Natch, you know, Star Wars, and that kind of stuff. And so I went and saw that film, the beginning of New Trek. And I went and saw it, and I left the theater going like, okay, you know what? I might actually become a Trekkie. Like, I genuinely came out of it going, I want to see more of this, because that was genuinely entertaining.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, yeah. And so, you know, they're within a fandom of any kind, you're going to have people who are like, no, what you've done is awesome. I love this. I want more. And then you're going to have the people who are, you know, I don't like change. I'm a grognard. I've invested so much in this, like this is threatening to me.
Right. Reactionaries.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think 4th edition, sadly, in my opinion, alienated far more people than it brought into the hobby, because it lasted a very short period of time, and there was a lot of crowing when it looked like 4th edition had turned into a bust. There was an awful lot of crowing by a lot of those same grognards about, see, it's dying. It's because they killed it. It sucks. It deserves to go away. You know, kind of stuff. And, you know, and all right, whatever. So then in 2012, Wizards, so 5 years later, an even shorter period of time than 3.5 had existed, 5 years after 4th came out, Wizards announced that they were going to come out with another edition of the game, and initially they referred to it as D&D Next, and the project was D&D Next. Like, okay, so we figured out there's some limitations to 4th edition. There's people who don't like what we've done. So we're working on trying to figure out what we're going to do with D&D as a game. And I heard about this, and because in writing this episode, I kind of figured out that every time there's been a new edition of this game, I have responded with a mixture of, oh man, what are they going to do? Combined with an awful lot of, dude, whatever this is, I want it now. Because I don't know how to describe what that is, but it's like, no, what's the new hotness? I must have this. I want to see what they're going to do. Like, this is going to be awesome. And like, I mean, I've been disappointed a couple of times, but usually I've just been like, yes, this is amazing. This is the next big thing. I got to do this. And 5th edition was no different. As a matter of fact, with 5th edition, I was like, you know what? They're saying they're having an open play test.
Right.
I got to sign up for this shit. Like, how do I get to do this? And so I actually wound up participating. I DM'd. I ran several sessions of the 5th edition rule set as it was being developed. And then in 2013, between 2012 and over the course of 2013, they released a series of packets of, okay, here's the latest iteration of what we're doing with the rules. Play this, figure out how it's working, respond to us, let us know what's working, what's not.
Right.
And in one of the playtest packets, I most clearly remember all of my players agreeing, including the guy who was playing the wizard character, agreeing that Firebolt is way too powerful a spell. Like, as a first level, or Ray of Fire. Ray of Fire is way too powerful a spell. It should not
Bolt
do
of
this
Flame.
much damage. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Bolt of Flame should not be doing this much damage as a first level spell. I should not be able to do this. Like, and this was part of the feedback. And I was really excited to get to do that. And so in 2014, they released the official 5th edition rule set for D&D. Okay, so now again, just like since 3.5, they're not referring to it as AD&D anymore. So now it's 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. And now you and I actually have experience playing together in this rule set.
Yes.
And I think it's safe to say that we both like this rules set.
Yes, there's a clear line from I would say 3rd ed all the way up through this, like in terms of them wanting to make it easier to play. And here's the part that really matters to me, that kind of points to the generation gap. It is easier for us to make a cooperative storyline, a collaborative storytelling session.
Yes, very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is they have chosen in 5th edition, a balance point somewhere between granularity and simplicity.
And between lore and iconoclasm.
Okay, explain what you mean by iconoclasm in that text, in that sense.
Sure. So in the previous one, the gods have done something totally different. All the things you thought you knew are different. Superman is back, and he's a single dad. It's everything's different. It's different kind of for the sake of being different, because it's been the same for so long that we need to shake things up. That seems to be it. And people react badly when you shake things up purely for the sake of shaking things up. You don't just turn a good guy into a bad guy unless you're trying to kill off that character. You give the bad guy a reason to be a bad guy, in wrestling. You can't just shake it up, right?
Yeah. A heel face or a face heel turn has to be explained.
Exactly. There has to be a logic to it. Like Macho Man had a reason to attack Hulk Hogan. Stuff like that.
Hulk was a dick.
You know, you had in 4 in Pathfinder, you had the all the gods that you thought were cool, or all the gods that you know really got to know, and you memorized what each of them was, you know, what their sphere of influence was, and on and on and on. Ha ha! Look, we've changed it all. Scrappy doo. And now,
I love how we keep going back to that example.
yeah. And now in 5e, it seems to have settled back in toward what people knew a bit, like in terms of the lore with all the stuff that they've released and things like that. There are some new twists. There are some redefinitions of things. There are definitely inclusions where previously they had not been thought of, which I rather enjoy. But more importantly, it is in many ways like we're going back to Coke Classic, but we're calling it Coke Classic. You know, and so 5e I think strikes the balance between, oh, we're gonna change some stuff up here, folks, but we're not gonna change it up so that it's unrecognizable and you have to learn a whole new set of cosmology.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, no, I think that's a meaningful point. And
Mm-hmm.
5th, also, very very importantly, reintroduced, or I should say reintroduced, because fourth edition included feats, but feats were almost kind of vestigial.
Mm-hmm.
They felt kind of tacked on,
Mm-hmm.
and they provided the ability to do kind of different stuff, but they didn't have the same flash that they had in 3rd and 3.5. And with 4th, feats can be a very important part of your character, but there's a limited set of them.
Right.
and they said, okay, no, look, here's what they are, and we're not going to go introducing hundreds of new ones just to introduce hundreds of new ones. And the way the mechanic of the way the mechanics of spells and abilities and everything feel
Mm-hmm.
a lot more like 3.5, or feel a lot more like 2nd edition. But at the same time, they've kept the idea that everybody in the party has something special they can do
Mm-hmm.
most turns.
Mm-hmm.
Which was one of the really big deals in 4th edition, was we want to give everybody something they can do every round. We don't ever want to have a situation where the wizard is like, well, you know, that's it, I'm spent.
Right.
You know, or where the fighter just says, I hit him over the head again.
Yep.
You know, we want to give everybody something kind of flashy, something kind of cool they can do every time they have a turn. And in 4th, that wound up turning into, well, you know, okay, this time I'm using this every round. This time I'm using this one. This, you know, you'd switch back and forth between powers that were kind of scripted,
Right.
which turned into a limitation.
Yeah.
But with this one, you know, fighters, like, okay, well, you know, what fighter archetype are you doing? What fighting style have you chosen? And you can still have a character who it's like, no, I look different from that other fighter over there, and
Mm-hmm.
I fight differently from that other character over there. You know, and you still have that ability to customize things, and there's that level of granularity.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, very importantly, they introduced advantage and disadvantage.
Which I loved, because if there's one word that I would use to describe 5e, it's streamlined.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so it's okay, well, here's the deal. All of these conditions give you advantage.
Mm-hmm.
All of these conditions give the other guy disadvantage.
But
Or
what happened to
you,
me stacking things up and like having a plus 20 to my roll?
like, oh, for fuck's sake, just roll 2 dice and pick the biggest one.
Right.
Come on. You know, and it still feels like, oh man, I have advantage, and that's a big deal.
It is.
Because I mean, like, you know, statistically, look at the way those rolls go, and no, that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it manages to be a big deal without everybody having to keep track of, you know, a dozen different modifiers at once.
Right.
And so what's interesting is I don't know to what extent 5th edition has brought people back from Pathfinder. I genuinely don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that 5th edition has been a very big success at bringing new people into the hobby.
Yes.
Sales figures for 5th edition are way better than 4th. And it's since the advent of 5th that, and part of this is technology advancing, but Critical Role and all of the podcasts and the major gaming group Real Play podcasts that we see, and those media, nearly all of that is post 5th edition.
Yeah, it's like we hit a critical mass.
Yeah, and the brand of Dungeons and Dragons, I think, has now become. It's still not mainstream. You're still, if you play D&D, you're still a nerd. There's no getting around that. But their 5th has lowered the threshold of entry for people.
Yes.
And you no longer need to be an obsessive nerd. You need to pay attention to some math, but you don't need to be like a mathlete.
Yeah, and
anymore.
Well, because you're not strategizing how to win.
Yes.
You're not coming up with like, well, if I stack this over here and then on this level I get this thing, and if I do this on this level, like you're not doing that, which is nice. Yeah. Which, by the way, 3.5 more I think than the others enabled you to create the most specific character you could.
Oh my God, yeah.
So there is literally not another fighter that is like this character, right? Well, in 5e, there are going to be, because there's only 9 or 10 different, subclasses for fighters. So you're going to have similarities and overlap, and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, because the real thing about that is that, you're into the collaborative storytelling, whereas in 3.5 it was still a remnant of the I want to go hit monsters and take their stuff so that I can win.
Yes.
So, and which was interesting, because you would think the one that allows you the greater creativity when it comes to creating characters would be the one that allows more cooperative storytelling, but in fact it was the opposite. So again, another reason why they nerd raged against 4.0 and Pathfinder.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's part of it. And again, the nerd rage against fourth edition was I think exacerbated, accelerated in the sense of somebody using an accelerant to pour fuel on a fire. It was accelerated by Pathfinder existing. So the nerd rage was directed at 4th,
right?
And it was aided and abetted by the fact that now there had been this Lutheran schism, and if you didn't want to go along with the church and stick with 4th or go to 4th, you could instead go to 3.5 or go to Pathfinder, which was still 3.5, and you could talk about how Wizards of the Coast was swimming in shit. Which, by the way, is one of my favorite quotes from Martin Luther about the Pope. I love telling my students when we get to talking about the Reformation, I love telling them that, no, Martin Luther had a potty mouth. Like if I had directly quoted Martin Luther in front of you guys, I would get in trouble.
Wow.
So anyway, but it was because there had been that split that I think the anger could remain at the fever pitch that it did, because between 1st and 2nd edition there were people who were like, this doesn't feel like my game anymore, and they kept playing using the 1st edition rules. Between 2nd and 3rd edition they were like, well, it doesn't feel like D&D anymore, but it's a pretty good system, we're going to keep going. Between 3rd third and fourth, it was like, you have insulted my ancestors,
Oh yeah.
and I will never make peace. and now we're into fifth edition, and like within the last 7 days, I've seen people throwing shit at each other online,
Right.
because somebody had the temerity to say that, well, I really liked fourth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like, you like cancer then.
It's like, no, broccoli.
No, yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, broccoli. Like, fuck off.
Yeah.
Now, I did find it heartening that the guy who threw that toxicity was immediately bet by like half a dozen people in the forum going, dude,
Mm-hmm.
where did the bad man touch you? Like,
Mm-hmm.
walk away. Which was nice to see, because 5 years ago that wasn't there.
Right.
There would have been 5 or 8 other guys joining him to pile in on the guy who said he liked fourth.
Right.
So that was a nice change. the level of no man, walk it off was nice to see.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, this is now what I want to kind of add a coda to with this.
Mm-hmm.
Is now that we're living in the 5th edition world, we're also now living in the world where Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
We're also living in a world where Black Panther was a major important motion picture that made a huge amount of money at the box office.
Over $1 billion.
Yeah, we're living in a world where we've had a mainstream Marvel comic character be a Muslim teenage girl,
Mm-hmm.
and where that same character name has now been portrayed on screen by a woman in a movie that ended without that woman choosing to fight her evil mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Where at the end of it, she just said, "You know what? I don't need to fight you."
Yeah, I don't. Well, she specifically said, "I don't have anything to prove to you."
Yes.
Which that's a very, like,
Oh my God.
you passed the test. You've graduated from him begging the question that you need to fight him. Instead of like, well, yes, I could kick your ass. It's, I don't have to prove myself to you.
Yeah.
Like, that is a really important line in terms of that kind of stuff. And many people have said that Brie Larson's depiction of Captain Marvel, she is coded as gay, and the haircut in Endgame certainly helped that. So you're
can see that.
Yeah, you're speaking to one aspect of it, but there is a second aspect, and that is absolutely alive and vibrant in the 5e stuff as well.
Oh,
representation not just of color and gender, but also gender fluidity, as well as sexuality.
Yeah, and there's a meme that went around,
Mm-hmm.
or is going around, that I was very disappointed by, because I'm a huge fan of the Dragonlance setting.
Mm-hmm.
The world of Ansalon from Dragonlance is my happy place, in terms of, like, fantasy fiction comfort food.
Mm-hmm.
That's my thing. And I have identified to a possibly unhealthy degree with Sturm Brightblade from the time I was about 12 years old.
Okay.
The Knight of Solamnia, who never feels like he lives up to the ideals of the order, consistently, winds up actually having the epiphany. That's a very important moment kind of in the series. Spoiler alert for a book, that's practically 40 years old now. He dies in a moment of self-sacrifice. But he realizes that the order he desperately wants to be part of,
Mm-hmm.
he realizes that order has become ossified and is more concerned with the letter of its own rules than the spirit of its own honor.
Yeah, Poole's law of iron bureaucracy, writ medieval.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his whole, like, the core of his character is the oath of the Knights of Solamnia. Est Solaris oath mythos, my honor is my life.
Mm-hmm.
And this character and this setting are literally part of my own moral compass.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this setting so desperately, and I was so disappointed to see this meme. There was an image from, I don't know, related to some more recent D&D 5th edition or one of the podcasts that I mentioned, one of those campaigns,
Mm-hmm.
that was a whole bunch of characters from a very modern D&D party. As you mentioned, looking very gender fluid. Multiple tieflings in the party, so horns and kind of bat wings kind of going on,
Right.
and purple skin tones and pale and natural like chalk white skin tones,
Mm-hmm.
and like all this kind of stuff in between, all of which is subconsciously coded for gender fluidity,
Yes.
queerness, racial difference, all of this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this party of 2019, 2000 teens, into 2020s, concept of this is a D&D party, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with all of that kind of subconscious kind of thing going on with it, and that was the top image, and it was a pretty badass image. It was not an aesthetic that I grew up with. It's not an aesthetic that lights me badass. That's valid. So an image on top, and then a famous painting of the companions from Dragonlance,
Mm-hmm.
kind of the iconic figures from that setting, including Stern Brightblade, on the bottom. And the top picture said, "Reject modernity." The bottom said, "Embrace tradition."
Wow.
And I saw that, and I was so fucking disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just like, okay, no. Because maybe not every single face, one of the characters in the companions is a barbarian character who is coded in the setting as essentially being a Plains Indian. So
Okay.
technically, he's not a white guy.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, one of the characters is a half elf, but he's
Mm-hmm.
got
Mm-hmm.
colored eyes and reddish hair. One of them is a dwarf, so not human. One of them is a kender, so basically a halfling. So, okay,
Mm-hmm.
not human. But basically, they're all white.
Right.
Several of them are female, but the female characters in the group, one of them is the cleric. So the woman is shunted into a healing, caretaking position. One of them is a fighter who, in the novels, is drawn of the main fighter of the party. And then the third one is the elvish princess who's in love with the half-elf dude. And like, okay, for 1985...
Mm-hmm. I mean, you basically just
was.
listed Gauntlet.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Not wrong. Yeah. But we're living in an era now where many more people who are playing our game identify as queer.
Yes.
Like, are able to freely identify
Mm-hmm.
as queer.
Mm-hmm.
We are living in an era where more and more non-white people, Black, Indigenous, people of color, VIP is playing our game. We are living in an era. In the player's handbook, multiple characters are shown as being non-white.
Yes.
And as you've already pointed out, are shown as being genderqueer. Like, are they binary? Maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're shown in ways that are representative of ways that people exist in the world openly now. And you want to take all of that and you want to run back to your fucking treehouse with all of the other white boys in your mom's basement back in 1986. Like, and of mine who took it down after I caustically pointed these things out, and another mutual friend of ours pointed the same things out.
Mm-hmm.
And he took it, and I don't, and like, I know he's not the kind of person to like exclude anybody from the game group. He's not the kind of person to be like against anybody's identity. But the thing is, we operate in a hobby for the first 30 plus years of its existence was overwhelmingly
Right.
cishet white guy. And a lot of us are of an age where we grew up with all of our heroes being cishet white guys. Like Stern Brightblade is a cishet white guy. I'm not going to lie about that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
That's a thing. But, we need to be aware of the ways in which we consciously or unconsciously make our hobby welcoming or not welcoming to people who don't fucking look like us, who don't have our same life experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to bring this around to is last year Wizards added material. If you go online and you buy a PDF copy of Oriental Adventures from first edition AD&D, there's going to be a page in that PDF that you're buying that's going to say this was published in an earlier era, and it includes things that are stereotypes
Mm-hmm.
that may be offensive to people now. And the fact that Wizards went in and added that page to those books
Mm-hmm.
had a great many guys your age and mine,
Oh yeah.
and older than us, absolutely shrieking
Mm-hmm.
about how Wizards of the Coast was giving into PC pressure and they were turning into social justice warriors. And my God, why can't you just let us have our hobbies? Well, here's the deal, motherfucker. There are other people who are joining us in our hobbies now who might look at that, who might actually want to try playing in a first edition game, but would look at that book and go, oh my fucking God, what are you saying about my people?
Right.
Like, no, man. This is literally the country my ancestors came from.
Mm-hmm.
And you're depicting this how?
Yeah.
Like, I look at some of the stuff in Oriental Adventures as a historian of East Asia, and I'm like, well, okay, that's kind of a massive oversimplification, but okay.
Right.
I'm saying that as a white guy. Like, if I were Chinese or Korean,
Mm-hmm.
or to a lesser extent, it got most of the stuff about Japan fairly accurately, but like, dude,
Yeah.
there's stuff that like I can't even begin to talk about it because I'm not from one of those cultures, but like looking at that, I can totally see how some of the generalizations and some of the myths that are perpetuated in it could be really offensive to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And like, acknowledging that that's the case is the absolute bare minimum.
Yeah. And people get real upset that that's happening.
And the thing is, I think also this is part of what happened with 3.5 and into 4th is there's this recognition that there are more people joining the hobby. Those people don't all look like us, and oh my God, you're invading my treehouse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is where I actually turn into an edition warrior. This is the point at which I actually get really angry about this, because at the time between second edition and 3.5, it didn't really matter to me.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, between third and fourth, it didn't really matter to me. Now, after George Floyd, now in a world where Black Lives Matter, now in a world where I've started actually paying attention to this shit, it really makes me mad.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was raised to believe that I should be doing everything I can to not be the guy who's an asshole.
Right.
And if I'm saying, well, why are you making me do this thing to acknowledge that this might be offensive? Like anybody, this isn't offensive. I don't think this is offensive. Well, you know what? If you don't, that doesn't mean somebody else might not.
Right.
And if you refuse to acknowledge that there's even the chance of it being offensive, or worse yet, if you say, well, you shouldn't be offended by this.
Right. Erasing their experience.
Yeah, no, fuck you.
Well, I would even...
Fuck you. I don't want you at my gaming table. Like the thing I've come around to is like, if you have a problem with this, if you're going to perpetuate this, reject modernity, stick with tradition kind of shit, you know what? I don't need you in my gaming group.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are a whole lot of younger, queer players of color who are going to come up with way cooler character concepts and are going to have a lot more fun actually fucking role playing than you. So you get the fuck out of my gaming store. Like you said earlier in our last episode, talking about being a reverse gatekeeper. That's like fully where I am with this. Like, I don't need you in my hobby.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I want to go back to the I kind of lost the thread there. The offensive part. They are seeing inclusion as invasion. They are seeing, like you said, you've come to my treehouse. They're seeing dehumanization as merely offensive. They're seeing like there is a muting of another person's experience. And what I get a kick out of is that in these games, you never have a party of nothing but fighters. You never have a party of nothing but any single class. You absolutely have to have diversity in your party. The way to win at D&D is having a diverse party.
Yeah.
And yet, when it comes to actually having different folks with different perspectives and different goals, suddenly there's a reticence, a discomfort.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's yeah. I mean that's basically it. Like they're more than just gatekeeping. They're excluding.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is like what you think was offensive to people and therefore it's not that big a deal was dehumanizing and therefore exclusionary. And it did its job. It made it so that you had a safe space for yourself to never be challenged. But frankly, those are challenges you should have moved past quite a while ago. And they shouldn't have been challenges. But that's in many ways what's going on there is that D&D has ceased to be as exclusive. I'm not going to say it's perfect. I'm not going to say that it's done a perfect job. Very often progress happens in fits and starts, and there are steps backward before you step forward. And I think there have been half steps and errors along the way, but the overall arch is leading toward inclusion of other people and validation of their experiences and their fantasy wants. And I think that's a very, very good thing because in the beginning, it was fetishization of other people's fantasy wants. And now it's the inclusion of other people's fantasy wants. And it's the inclusion of other people instead of the fetishization of other people. And I think that's always good to a game.
Yeah. Well, if you don't bring new people into a hobby,
it dies.
The hobby dies.
Yeah.
Like it's really as simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm not going to fib. I'm not gonna lie here. I I am perfectly happy playing in a campaign setting that is very clearly, hey man, this is like really, really, really Western Europe in the 1400s. Like
Right.
I would totally do that, and I'd be
Mm-hmm.
totally comfortable doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, we're gonna just basically port everything from Tolkien into this, and like those are all the tropes we're using, and it's gonna be totally troporific, and we're fine with that.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and I'd play the hell out of that, and I'd have a lot of fun doing it. But there are a lot of people who'd look at that and go, okay, but this thing is problematic here.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about the idea that an entire race of people is evil? Like, as a
Right.
default, with like no. Can we talk about that? Like, this makes me uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have somebody confront you with that, the response should be, okay, let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, yeah, maybe that's a thing. Maybe we should look into that. Let's figure out how to work that out. And if somebody says, well, if I want to play this character who does this, okay, like, as I mean, I personally don't like the idea of playing evil aligned characters, just because my adventure fantasies don't involve being a dick. But you know anything else, I'm totally, like,
Yeah.
let's talk about that. Let's turn this into a collaboration.
Right.
And so that nobody who I know is listening is thinking I'm attacking anybody. I know that my friends who are massive edition warriors from earlier editions are not the kind of people to exclude anybody from their table at all, and are not and are committed to being open-minded and accepting of people in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some conversations that we've had about the underlying kind of tropes and assumptions that are involved in some of the stuff they want to have in the games that they run and play.
Mm-hmm.
And they get uncomfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
And with all of the love and respect I have for them, like, guys, because you are guys, and
Mm-hmm.
you're probably thinking I'm only talking to one of you right now because I've had these conversations with each of you separately, but no, I'm talking to more than one of you right now. With all of the love and respect and admiration I have for you, let's think about broadening our horizons a bit.
Right.
And let's think about the level of emotional reaction we're having to steps that are being taken to make the hobby more inclusive to other people who don't look like us and haven't had our life experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And let's try to remember that that isn't actually a threat to our ability to have fun.
Yeah.
And like in the middle of us recording these sessions, between recording sessions, we talked about we need to talk about the issues, the racial issues, the kind of white, the systemic white supremacy that kind of is involved in tabletop hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if there's enough statistically kind of stuff, if there's enough scholarly anything to really spend a whole episode on it. But I think kind of touching on it here is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is kind of my effort to try to do that here at the end.
Mm-hmm.
is because of these things that have happened recently with publishers, and the response that I've seen from too many guys my age who look like me.
Mm-hmm.
That the hobby is being ruined, and Wizards has just gone the way of caving to PC pressure, and now orcs are people too. And I mean, we had a whole episode about me starting out kind of bitching about the idea of orcs being people too, and then eventually having to come around to, no,
Yeah.
If we're being intellectually honest and we don't want to be jerks about it, they kind of have to be.
Yes.
You know, and yeah, that's basically kind of it. Is we need to recognize that having a more inclusive hobby, having a set of rules and a set of settings and aesthetics that make people feel represented and make people feel welcome is a good thing for all of us.
Yeah. I would say the setting thing is especially important. Having a picture of your fighter be, Carthaginian and Numidian, that's cool. But it's really cool having an entire setting that's not Central Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh heck, if they even did Central Europe, that'd be kind of a big change.
That's true.
I think you were looking for Eurocentric. But if they actually had a game system that was in the Balkans, that'd be huge.
I was just thinking of like where a huge forest was that the Romans were afraid of.
Oh, okay. So in that sense, yes.
Yeah.
But you say Central Europe, and I go actually farther east than Germany. I think Czechoslovakia.
Yeah.
And over into the Balkans, which is, I guess, technically Eastern Europe. But anyway, so yeah, no, like we used to, my buddies and I, in high school, we whined and complained so much about how none of the girls at our high school were nerds.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we were wrong because they were. We just weren't paying attention and didn't like. We had our own issues that we weren't, looking in the right places or recognizing the right things, which was sexist of us, like hugely. And I know that,
and juvenile, but you guys are literally juveniles.
Like we literally were juveniles. So, I'm going to have a little bit of compassion for my old self, but like, if we ever have him on the show, a friend of the show, Bishop O'Connell, is going to corroborate for me that, like, no, we had extended bitching sessions about, like, not having any girls in our circle of friends, and and now the hobby is getting progressively more and more female friendly, along with more LGBTQ friendly and ethnically, racially friendly to other people, and there's more and more representation there. And it's like so many guys my own age are all of a sudden like getting pissed off about this stuff. And I'm like, guys, do you not remember?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, in some cases, they don't. But because, let's be honest, that was 30 years ago. But
yeah,
come on now. So anyway, that's I don't know. That's kind of where I'm ready to leave it. At this point is just, the roots of the edition wars include some generational and representational issues that I think anybody who's angry about it needs to really reflect on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my money shot. There we go.
Yeah. No, I see no reason to disagree. I would point out that, here's what I've gleaned over the last several episodes is as the editions have gone on in time, we as a society have evolved, as a society does. As a culture, we have evolved. We have allowed more people at the table. As a culture, that is good. It is only fitting that the art and the games that we play reflect that. To think otherwise is to think that culture is a static thing, and that's simply untrue. And also, evolution of a game system is never going to be perfect because it grows semi-organically and semi-planned by people who are enmeshed in their culture. So, I mean, this is a game that started in the 1970s. Hank Aaron broke the home run record in the 1970s. He was getting death threats.
Oh yeah.
That was in the 70s. That was only a couple years before our beloved game got started.
Oh yeah. No,
So
the world is a immensely different place.
yeah, it's changed by leaps and bounds. Our population has exploded. We have, again, like I said, more representation. We have, that was 2 generations ago.
Oh fuck you.
And then some.
God,
So
yeah, no, you're right.
it's true though, and it's
it totally is.
So all of that, a game is reflective. A game is art, and art is reflective of the culture and shapes the culture, because it reinforces the stories and it tells the stories.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the reasons that, like, why is it getting more inclusive? Because our society is. Why is it getting more collaborative? Because our society is starting to realize that that's the way out. So yeah, it would make sense that would be the fantasy. So, you can tell a lot about a culture by how it fantasizes and how dearly people hold on to those fantasies, I think. And I think this is starting to show that.
That's very deep for an otherwise very frivolous kind of topic. Yeah.
Well, all right. So, what are you reading? Anything? Reading, watching, seeing, listening to?
Watching.
Sure.
I have recently had the chance to get back into watching Longmire on Netflix, which I recommend very highly.
Mm-hmm.
Because it has, I think, one of the best representations of an adult male, of a very deep adult male friendship.
Okay.
That I've seen. The protagonist and his best friend, the titular Longmire, is the sheriff of a town in Wyoming, and his best friend is a Native American owner of a bar in the town, and the two of them have a friendship that goes back to Vietnam, because they're both old guys.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazingly well written, and Lou Diamond Phillips plays the best friend, and he's amazing.
Speaking of representation, I just heard a quote from him the other day. He said, "If I only played my bloodline, I never would have gotten work."
There you go.
Yeah. So cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's my recommendation. I'm not reading anything right now. I want to try to fix that. So,
yeah.
How about you?
I'm going to recommend, so there's a fellow that I'm friends with, and he doesn't know that I'm plugging this on this podcast. I don't even know if he listens. His name's Teo Morgan, and before the Plague Times, he had a game that he kind of homebrewed up. It was kind of D&D, but it ended up not being D&D. Anyway, it was called Diversity and Dragons. And he used to do it down at the Comedy Spot, and he and I were always talking about, like, when he could get me on, because, I play D&D, I'm a big nerd, and on and on and on. It never actually happened, and he had a really cool regular cast. But he also, I know, put a few of them on the YouTubes. So if it's still out there, I'm recommending people check out Diversity and Dragons. And he's an interesting cat. You look up Teo Morgan, Teo Morgan. Probably find him on all the social medias. He has a lot of interesting things to say about diversity in these role playing games. So,
all right.
Yeah. So that's what I would recommend. So,
all right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to. I'm now, after recording all this, I'm fired up to go look that up.
Cool. Let me know how it goes.
Yeah.
So where can people find you if they want to tell you why they're not going to fuck off out of your hobby?
They can find me at EH Blaylock on Twitter, and also at those same initials on TikTok, although you won't find very much at that address. And on Instagram, you can find me at Mr. Blaylock. And of course, if you want to shout at both of us at the same time, you can find us at Geek History Time on the Twitter machine. And where can they find you?
Find me at Harmony on Twitter and Instagram. Find me every Tuesday night on twitch.tv/Capital Puns, Tuesday nights at 8:30 p.m. Those are a few good places to find me. So, yeah. Oh, and also anytime there's a door that needs to be held open, I'm your guy.
There you go. Because you're a monk, and that's what monks do.
That's what monks do. All right. Well, for a Geek History of Time, I'm Damian Harmony.
And I'm Ed Blaylock. And until next time, may all of your skill rolls have advantage.